9 floodgates, open at the same time. A 28 billion structure under pressure it has never faced before, after a flood being described as the worst in 30 years. And a senior official inside the system that manages that structure has just vanished from his post right. As leaked information about it started spreading across overseas social media. This is the Three Gorges Dam, the largest hydroelectric project on Earth. And by some estimates, more than 100 million people in China are living within reach of it, if the worst were ever to happen. 20 minutes. That's all the warning residents downstream of the Liulan Reservoir got from the moment the water started rising abnormally to the moment the dam gave way completely.
六兰水库，那大坝倒下了，整个村差不多没了。
On July 6th, under the force of Typhoon Maysak and days of extreme rainfall, the Liulan Reservoir in Hangzhou, Guangxi, collapsed almost without warning. It's the largest reservoir in the region, holding about 66 million cubic meters of usable capacity, a number that sounds massive until you put it next to the Three Gorges. At the same time, the Yunbiao Reservoir was also in crisis, with overtopping and visible cracking. Since July, at least 15 other medium and small reservoirs across Hangzhou and nearby areas have run into trouble at the same time: seepage, overtopping, partial failures. A local water management system revealing multiple cracks all at once. The official death toll Beijing has released stands at 39 dead, 9 missing, and it hasn't been updated since, even as the disaster spread across dozens of reservoirs. Meanwhile, footage circulating online shows something far larger. Bodies floating in the water, entire villages swept away in moments. It's worth being precise here. The fact that no independent number has replaced the official one is not evidence that the official one is accurate. China hasn't allowed independent journalists or international organizations into the area to verify anything, and police are reportedly sealing off the disaster zone. The blackout itself is the most notable part of this story. But what happened in Guangxi, as terrifying as it is, becomes small next to the scale of the Three Gorges. Liulan holds about 66 million cubic meters of usable capacity. The Three Gorges Dam's flood control capacity alone is 22.15 billion cubic meters, roughly 335 times larger. If a structure as small as Liulan revealed this many failure points during this one storm, the obvious question is, what happens if a megastructure like the Three Gorges runs into the same kind of problem, especially right now, with 9 of its gates open at once to handle a flood being called the strongest in 3 decades? On July 20th, someone claiming to be an official inside the Three Gorges Corporation posted a string of explosive claims on X that the real death toll in Hangzhou is far higher than what's been officially reported, that police are keeping people out of the disaster zone specifically to cover up the truth, that the base of the Three Gorges Dam is leaking in multiple places, with some points losing as much as 30 cubic meters of water an hour, that some senior leaders have quietly relocated their families under the cover of study assignments elsewhere, while lower-level staff were ordered to stay in place, and that if the Three Gorges Dam were to fail, at least 470 million people could be affected. The same person claimed that last year's water infrastructure budget, reportedly 1.28 trillion yuan, was drained away through layer after layer of management, so that by the time it reached the actual construction teams, only a fraction of it remained. It's important to be clear about where this comes from. All of it originates with a single anonymous individual, claiming insider status, posting on social media, in a system where independent journalists can't get near the site, and where domestic social media keeps deleting posts that describe the real damage. Insider accounts like this are often the only channel through which suppressed information has any chance of getting out, much like what happened at Chernobyl, where the truth only surfaced because another country happened to detect the traces, not because the government chose to disclose it. One day later, on July 21st, China's Central Commission for Discipline Inspection issued a brief notice. Wu Kairen, general manager of the Three Gorges Corporation's Guangxi branch, was under investigation for suspected serious violations of party discipline and the law. He's 54, with a long career inside the Three Gorges System Deputy Department Head, Technical Management Director, Chief Engineer, a senior manager with deep access to core information about the dam. Just 10 days before the investigation was announced, he was reportedly still out on a project inspection in Beihai. The timing and investigation launching almost immediately after the leaked claims went viral, overseas led many to suspect a direct connection. Even though on paper, the Guangxi reservoirs aren't under the Three Gorges Corporation's authority at all. That mismatch only fueled more speculation. Someone else, also claiming insider knowledge, later added a different explanation, that Wu wasn't taken in for corruption, but for repeatedly letting slip details about the flood and the internal state of the Three Gorges system at private dinners. This person described him as an engaging talker, someone who told vivid stories including chilling descriptions of hundreds of bodies drifting together in fast-moving stretches of river. Wu wasn't the only one. Another executive in the system, Wu Changyu, general manager of the Three Gorges Corporation's Yunnan energy investment arm, who had worked on hydropower projects along the Jinsha River, was also investigated and later disciplined. The same self-described insider claimed that internal departments have long kept hundreds of pages of analysis on a Three Gorges collapse scenario modeled at the 72-hour, 1 week, 3-month and 6-month marks, with data described as extremely detailed. A video posted alongside the claim showed hundreds of pages stacked on a table, with maps on top depicting flood zones, flow speed simulations, population heat maps, and transportation disruption, all built on a scenario where the dam fails completely and instantly while the reservoir sits above 175 meters, using the HEC-RAS hydrodynamic model combined with terrain data. According to what circulated, the flood crest would reach Yichang in just 6 hours, with flow speeds exceeding 10 meters per second. Within 24 hours, it reaches Jingzhou and Wuhan. By the 72-hour mark, the water tears through Anqing and Zhujiang. After a week, roughly 150,000 square kilometers across the middle and lower Yangtze become open water. With 29 cities inside the impact zone from Yichang and Wuhan to Nanjing, Hangzhou, Wuxi, and Shanghai, and about 132 million people affected, 63.2 million of them in zones flooded deeper than 2 meters. On infrastructure, over 7,400 kilometers of highways, nearly 9,900 kilometers of national and provincial roads, almost 2,300 kilometers of railway completely cut off, 156 bridges collapsed, 18 airports and 27 seaports shut down, something close to a total paralysis of transportation across the middle and lower Yangtze. In the most extreme version of the scenario, if ground-based power and telecom networks also went down, the only viable communication left might be satellite, which is why some speculated that opening up access to Elon Musk's Starlink network in the affected region could become a last resort option for relief efforts. The person who posted these maps argued the odds of them being fake were extremely low, pointing to 2 things. The data format matches official internal Chinese Water Authority documents, and dam failure drills and simulations are a routine part of disaster planning within the industry. That's the claim of the person who leaked it, not independent confirmation. But when asked about it, water engineer Wang Weiluo, an ethnic Chinese engineer based in Germany, who has spent years writing critically about the Three Gorges Dam, offered a notable assessment. The format of the maps is highly professional, consistent with the actual internal document style used by China's water authorities, not something an outsider could easily fabricate. The data, he noted, also lines up closely with a hypothetical scenario the water resources industry itself had modeled back in 1986-1988, meaning the numbers weren't invented at random, but match a framework that already existed inside the system. The one detail he questioned was the claim that the dam would fail completely. In under an hour physically, he said, that kind of collapse would more likely unfold over several dozen minutes rather than instantly. That's a technical correction, not a rejection of the document as a whole. Even if the actual collapse timeline were tens of minutes rather than under an hour, the scale of the flooding and the number of people affected wouldn't change meaningfully. He also pointed out that, as of his comments, neither the Three Gorges Corporation nor the government had denied or confirmed anything, a silence that, given how explosive this document is itself worth sitting with. The leaked material also closely matches a 3D animated dam failure simulation that circulated back in July 2020, one that frontline flood control staff at the time called highly professional. Not something an ordinary person could produce. The overlap between 2 unofficial sources on its own isn't enough to count as verified evidence by journalistic standards, and that needs to be said plainly. So what mechanism could actually cause a super dam like the Three Gorges to fail? More than 70% of historical dam failures happen at earth and rock dams, the kind that fail when water breaches the top, like Liulan. But a concrete gravity dam like the Three Gorges isn't immune. It just fails differently, not through the dam body itself, but through the foundation, underneath sliding or fracturing, a failure mode that's much harder to detect visually. And that usually doesn't come with the kind of visible early warning, like water spilling over the top, that would give people time to evacuate. A concrete gravity dam stays standing purely through the weight of the concrete, resisting water pressure and friction against the bedrock, which means the entire safety of the structure depends almost completely on whether that bedrock stays stable. In 1959, the Malpasset Arch Dam in France, also considered modern and solid for its time, collapsed completely in a matter of minutes. The cause wasn't the dam itself, but a geological fault beneath the foundation that hadn't been detected during the original survey. Once the reservoir filled, the bedrock slipped, cracks spread under the water pressure, and the entire structure lost its balance almost instantly. More than 400 people died, the critical lesson. No one detected the problem until after the dam had already failed, because the flaw was buried somewhere no one could see. The Three Gorges Foundation is said to sit on relatively solid granite bedrock, more stable than what was under Malpasset. But more stable doesn't mean absolutely safe. And the Three Gorges is vastly larger in scale than Malpasset ever was, meaning a small deviation, a microscopic crack invisible to the naked eye, could be amplified into consequences on a scale with no real precedent. Even setting aside extreme scenarios like a major earthquake or outside attack, the construction process itself, for concrete blocks this massive, carries an inherent risk of internal cracking. When cement reacts with water, concrete generates heat. In blocks weighing tens or hundreds of tons, the core can hold that heat for a long time, creating a temperature gap between the inside and the outside. And that gap causes uneven expansion, which forms cracks. That's exactly why the Hoover Dam in the United States, built in the 1930s, needed roughly 936 kilometers of cooling pipes installed inside the structure. Without them, simply waiting for that much concrete to cool naturally would have taken over a century. The Three Gorges uses similar solutions at a more modern scale, cooling the concrete mix, pouring in smaller sections, running cooling pipes through the structure. But these are risk reduction measures, not risk elimination. Thermal cracking in massive concrete pours remains a well-documented phenomenon in dam engineering, even on the most carefully built projects, according to official statements. The Three Gorges has more than 12,000 monitoring devices integrated with China's Beidou satellite system, one of the most advanced monitoring networks in the world for a hydropower project. But a sensor network, no matter how sophisticated, is only as good as the honesty and completeness of the data it produces. That's exactly why the controversy over 2019 satellite imagery, which appeared to show visible warping in the dam, was never fully put to rest. Officials explained it away as a satellite image stitching error. But that explanation came from the very party being asked to prove its own safety, not from an independent outside inspector. To this day, no third party has published raw measurement data to definitively confirm how much deformation, if any, has actually occurred. For years, engineers and internal sources have pointed to 6 categories of technical risk that exist at the Three Gorges Dam and appear to be getting worse over time. First, leakage at the dam body and its foundation. It's been alleged to reach as much as 30 cubic meters an hour, at some points roughly 500 liters of high-pressure water per minute, forcing its way out through some gap. The problem reportedly dates back to the earliest construction phase and spiked at the 135-meter and 175-meter water storage milestones. The most serious spot is the shiplock area, a 5-stage canal cut straight through granite mountainside, where leakage after reaching the 175-meter mark has reportedly hit more than 6 cubic meters a minute. Technically, seepage at the dam's foundation suggests the possibility of microscopic loosening in how the dam meets the bedrock at a minor earthquake or violent water level swings. And those gaps could gradually widen through repeated opening and closing cycles, letting more and more water force its way in a quiet, hard-to-reverse form of internal erosion. Second, silt buildup, and a direct contradiction of the dam's own store clear water, release muddy water plan. This was one of the reasons hydraulic engineer Huang Wanli opposed the project from the planning stage. The original idea was to lower water levels, to flush sediment out during flood season, then store water during the dry season. But after years of operation, an estimated 1.8 billion tons of silt has built up inside the reservoir. The slower current inside the reservoir lets sediment settle, especially near Chongqing, gradually forming what amounts to an underground dam made of silt, pushing upstream water levels higher and threatening the safety of upstream cities like Chongqing and Fuling. Third, reservoir-induced seismicity and landslides along both banks. This isn't a fringe theory. Reservoir-induced earthquakes are a documented geological phenomenon at large dams around the world. With nearly 40 billion cubic meters of water and a water level that swings by as much as 30 meters a year, the risk here isn't far-fetched speculation. The figure of more than 5,000 landslides gets cited often by critics of the dam. The fact that viral reports don't always properly cite the original academic source is a real shortcoming worth flagging. But that doesn't mean widespread landsliding around the reservoir isn't real. It's been documented in numerous reports and satellite images over many years. Fourth, deformation and shifting of the dam's individual blocks. The Three Gorges isn't a single solid piece of concrete. It's assembled from dozens of independent blocks sitting on bedrock, each capable of shifting horizontally and vertically, at different magnitudes and in different directions, some sliding downstream, others drifting upstream. This is one of the most contested points. Officials have acknowledged the dam can experience elastic deformation within allowable limits, while critics argue the actual movement exceeds what simple elastic deformation would suggest. Fifth, a slope stability crisis at the shiplock area to keep river traffic moving. Engineers cut a massive trench straight through granite bedrock on the left bank, creating what's considered the tallest engineered slope in the world, 175 meters deep. Blasting away that much mountain inevitably disrupts the mechanical balance the whole mountain had settled into. Anticipating exactly that, engineers installed tens of thousands of cables and anchor bolts, totaling more than 2,000 kilometers of figure that on its own tells you how seriously this risk was taken from the start. Monitoring data shows cumulative shifts in this area have already exceeded the original design limits, though officials haven't disclosed exactly how far past those limits they've gone. China's recent push to study building a second ship-lock canal, officially framed as a way to expand shipping capacity, could also reflect a deeper, unspoken concern about how much longer the current structure can hold. Sixth, a built-in conflict between power generation and flood control. Effective flood control requires lowering the reservoir to around 145 meters at the start of flood season to leave room for incoming water. But the higher the water level, the more electricity and revenue the dam generates, creating pressure to keep levels higher than recommended. On June 1, 2026, the water level ahead of the dam was reportedly close to 155 meters, about 9 meters above the flood control limit. When a major flood actually hits, the dam gets caught between two bad options: close the gates to protect the areas downstream, and rising water threatens Chongqing upstream. Open the gates to relieve pressure, and flooding gets worse downstream in places like Wuhan and Poyang Lake. It's true that the odds of a major dam failing completely in any given year of operation runs somewhere between 1 in 10,000 and 1 in 100,000, and instantaneous failures make up less than 5% of all recorded dam failure incidents. But that's an average for a single year of operation on a dam that was built and maintained to standard. It doesn't automatically apply to a structure that's been operating for more than 2 decades under constant water pressure, with reported leakage that's been increasing, unresolved disputes over block deformation, and operating inside a system where safety data isn't independently disclosed. A low baseline probability isn't a guarantee it's a starting point, and the specific risk factors being reported at the Three Gorges are exactly the kind of thing that could pull the real probability away from that average, in which direction no one, not even independent experts outside China, has enough data to say for certain. There's a deeper question running underneath this entire story. Can a disaster this large actually be hidden? One school of thought says that if something is big enough, involves enough people, and has severe enough consequences, it's almost impossible to cover up. History suggests it's more complicated than that. The earliest documented COVID-19 cases date back to late December 2019, but Wuhan wasn't locked down until January 23, 2020, a gap of more than 3 weeks that's widely described as a delay in disclosure, and one that helped the virus spread further before containment measures were fully in place, before it grew into a global crisis. Chernobyl tells a similar story. After the accident on April 26, 1986, information was kept quiet for several days, long enough for radioactive dust to spread through the environment. The truth didn't come out from the inside. It was discovered from the outside. A nuclear plant in Sweden, more than 1,000 kilometers away, picked up abnormal radiation readings on its own equipment, and after ruling out an internal leak, traced the source to radioactive dust carried on wind blowing in from the Soviet Union. It was only under international pressure and the threat of being reported to the International Atomic Energy Agency that the Soviets were forced to admit what had happened. Both cases point to the same lesson. Major disasters aren't always disclosed right away, and in many cases, the truth only comes out once it's no longer possible to hide it. Applied to the Three Gorges Dam and the 2026 Guangxi flood, that logic becomes especially relevant. When the systems for monitoring and disclosing information aren't fully transparent, an information gap can exist regardless of whether the underlying event is large or small. That's also why even the more extreme theories like the leaked simulation document can't simply be dismissed, even without fully verified proof. The scale of what the Three Gorges could potentially affect is so large that any unusual signal deserves to be taken seriously, while still holding firmly to the principle that unverified speculation shouldn't be treated as settled fact. It's not unusual in itself for a water authority to build extreme case disaster simulations. That's a normal part of disaster planning in any country with large dams. What would be unusual? If true, isn't that this document exists, it's that it has apparently never been shared publicly with the people who live along the river it describes. More than 100 million of them. based on figures that, according to the claims, had already existed inside the system for years before the Guangxi floods suddenly pushed this story into public view. The question isn't whether the Three Gorges Dam is some indestructible slab of concrete no structure on Earth is. The real question is what mechanisms could actually cause a super dam like this to fail? Where have those mechanisms actually happened before? And do the risk signals being reported right now? Leakage, deformation, foundation cracking. 9 floodgates forced open at once during a flood season being called the worst in 30 years line up with the warning signs that came before those earlier disasters.